Who are the Pleiadians? The civilization that claims to guide humanity. Stay until the end of this video, because what astronomy actually reveals about the star Taygeta, the place they supposedly call home, will change the way you look at the night sky forever. What if hundreds of people, across different countries, different decades, different languages, all claimed contact with the same extraterrestrial civilization? None of them knew each other. None of them had the internet, and yet every single description matched. Tall, blonde, blue-eyed, from a star cluster 400 light-years away called the Pleiades. These reports have been documented in books, radio interviews, independent investigations, and academic conferences. They've been dismissed, debated, and they refuse to go away. The question isn't whether you believe it. The question is, what explains the consistency? Let's find out. The strange case that started it all. In 1975, on a farm in rural Switzerland, a one-armed man started photographing unidentified objects in the sky above his fields. His name was Edward Albert Meier. No money, no scientific background, no obvious reason to fabricate an elaborate story that would make him a global laughingstock for decades. Meier claimed the beings who visited him came from Are, a planet orbiting the star Taygeta in the Pleiades. They spoke to him in Swiss German. They described quantum physics, galactic history, the rise and fall of civilizations that no longer exist. They said they had been watching Earth for a very long time. His photographs were sent to labs in the United States. The findings were inconclusive, which in UFO research means exactly nothing settled. Some experts found no evidence of manipulation. Others found plenty. The case has never been officially closed. But here's the detail most people overlook. The critics focused almost entirely on the photographs. Almost no one seriously investigated the technical descriptions. Meier was discussing ideas related to gravitational propulsion, vacuum energy, and interstellar travel long before those concepts became mainstream outside scientific circles. And while Meier was living on his Swiss farm, 8,000 kilometers away in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, a woman named Barbara Marciniak began receiving what she described as transmissions from beings who called themselves the same thing. Pleiadians, same appearance, same origin, same message, no internet, no contact between them, the same story. Who are they? Before going deeper, it's worth understanding exactly what these reports describe, because the level of consistency across unrelated sources is difficult to explain away. Physically, humanoid beings between 6 and 7 feet tall, fair skin, hair ranging from platinum blonde to silver white, eyes in shades of blue or green that contactees consistently describe as carrying a depth that doesn't feel human, like looking into something very, very old. Their resemblance to the Nordic archetype is striking enough that researchers have spent decades asking whether the gods of Norse mythology, Odin, Thor, the Aesir, might be cultural memory encoded over thousands of years. Not a claim, a hypothesis, but one that keeps resurfacing in ways that are hard to dismiss. Socially, accounts describe a civilization that moved past conflict millennia ago. No wars, no dominance hierarchies. Organized around 3 principles that appear in virtually every report, regardless of the contactee's language or background: love, wisdom, and service. Their communication is said to be telepathic, direct transmission of thought and feeling, with no language acting as an intermediary, no room for ambiguity, no possibility of deception. Many contactees describe the experience as a download, information arriving complete, instantaneous, wordless. Their home, the planet Are in the Taygeta system, is described as Earth-like but older, quieter, with longer natural cycles and an atmosphere slightly different from ours, a place where time seems to move differently. The impossible coincidences. Here's where it gets genuinely hard to explain. The Pleiades appear in cultures separated by oceans and millennia. Ancient Greeks, Mayans, Aboriginal Australians, Japanese, Sumerians, the Lakota. None of these civilizations had contact with each other. And yet every single one pointed to the same cluster of stars, and every single one connected that cluster to the origin of extraordinary beings. The Greeks called them the Seven Sisters, daughters of Atlas, pursued by Orion, placed in the sky by Zeus to protect them. A story of pursuit, protection, and ascension. The Japanese called them Subaru. The founder of the automaker was obsessed with the cluster, which is why 6 stars appear on every car's hood to this day. Ancient Japanese culture described the Pleiades not as the home of abstract gods, but of ancestors. The Meier built their calendar partly around the Pleiades. The ceremony they called the New Fire, the cosmic reset, only happened when the Pleiades reached the zenith of the night sky. Miss that window and the world, in their belief, could end. Aboriginal Australians carry oral histories about beings from those stars that researchers in oral tradition date back tens of thousands of years, not hundreds, tens of thousands. And the Lakota people of the North American plains called the Pleiades Teokasin, the place from which we came, not where the gods live, where humanity originated. Mainstream archaeology explains part of this. The cluster is bright, visible to the naked eye, useful for navigation and seasonal calendars. That's reasonable. What it doesn't explain is why cultures on opposite sides of the planet consistently associated this specific cluster not just with timekeeping, but with beings who descended and interacted with early humanity. Something else is going on here. And the next account may be the most compelling piece of the puzzle, the most striking account. In 1956, a man named Howard Meier published a report that divided the American UFO community straight down the middle. Meier was a photographer, a World War II veteran, a family man from New Jersey. He had no political agenda. He wasn't chasing fame, at least not at first. He claimed that since childhood, he had been visited by beings of Nordic appearance. Tall, fair, light-eyed. They introduced themselves as coming from other worlds, and decades later, the description would map precisely onto what Pleiadians would become known as. What makes Meier's case different isn't the contact itself. It's what he described about the nature of these encounters. The beings, he said, weren't observers, they were teachers. They spoke about the cyclical collapse of civilizations, about humanity's tendency to self-destruct at the height of its power, about a critical threshold, a fork in the road, that our species would inevitably reach, and the choice that would define what came next. His book, From Outer Space to You, was published in 1959. He was interviewed on radio programs across the country. Researchers visited his home. Some of his claims were later contested, and Meier himself walked back parts of his story, then walked back the retraction. Skeptics call that the behavior of a fraud. Supporters call it the behavior of a man struggling to describe something that had no language yet. What remained, beyond all the controversy, was the description. The same description that would appear independently in Meier's Switzerland, in Marciniak's Pittsburgh, in channeling sessions across Brazil, Australia, and Japan. No coordination, no shared source. The same beings. What would we see if we went to Taygeta? Set the accounts aside for a moment. Let's talk pure astronomy. Taygeta is real. It is a catalogued, studied star system, visible to the naked eye in the constellation Taurus, one of the brighter points in the Pleiades cluster. And what science tells us about it completely shatters the image most people have in their heads. Taygeta is not like our Sun. It is a binary system, 2 stars orbiting each other. The primary star alone carries 4.4 times the mass of our Sun, burns at a surface temperature of 13,700 Kelvin, more than double the Sun's 5,778, and shines with 600 times the luminosity. It belongs to spectral class B6, which means it radiates heavily in ultraviolet. For a planet to exist in the habitable zone around Taygeta, it would need to orbit at a dramatically greater distance than Earth orbits the Sun. And it would receive a fundamentally different kind of radiation, not the warm yellow glow we wake up to, but an intense blue-white light that would bathe every landscape in a color no human sunset has ever produced. Picture the sky from that planet, 2 suns casting double shadows across the surface. the blue-white intensity of the primary star tinting the entire atmosphere in a hue we don't have a word for. Nights that never fully darken because of the secondary star's glow on the horizon. Science confirms that Taygeta is extraordinary. What it cannot confirm, or deny, is whether anyone is there to watch those sunsets. Ancient conspiracy. If the Pleiadians visited Earth, they didn't arrive recently. Sumer, the first major recorded civilization, in what is now Iraq over 5,000 years ago, left behind cuneiform texts describing beings called the Anunnaki, entities from the sky who taught early humans to build, to write, to farm, to read the stars, who brought knowledge, who interacted with people, and who eventually left. In Egypt, the Great Pyramids of Giza align with Orion's belt with a precision that continues to impress structural engineers today. The pyramid texts, among the oldest religious writings in existence, describe the pharaoh's soul navigating between star systems after death, not as poetry, as instructions. Who wrote interstellar navigation instructions 4,500 years ago, and where did that knowledge come from? The Meier tracked Venus with minute-level accuracy. They calculated eclipses centuries in advance. They attributed this knowledge to beings who descended from the sky and eventually returned. The question no one has satisfactorily answered is, how? And Atlantis, described by Plato, dismissed by academia as allegory, yet present in the oral traditions of cultures that never read Plato. Some spiritual lineages claim the Pleiadians were present at the height of that civilization, that they shared technology, that they tried to prevent the collapse when the knowledge began to be used for control, that they failed. And that what we are living through right now is the second window, watched very, very carefully. What the skeptics say we need to stop here, because intellectual honesty is what separates a real investigation from propaganda. There is no scientific proof that the Pleiadians exist, no verified extraterrestrial material, no contact documented through reproducible, peer-reviewed methodology, nothing that would survive a serious academic review. Billy Meier's photographs were challenged by multiple image analysts. Howard Menger partially walked back his own testimony. The prophecies attributed to Pleiadians were mostly documented after the events they claimed to predict, which is not prophecy. It's retrospective storytelling. Cognitive psychology has robust explanations for channeling, dissociative states, narrative pareidolia, confirmation bias. Sociology explains the consistency across reports through cultural diffusion. Stories travel, and before the internet, they traveled through books, radio, and conferences. A compelling story spreads. People unconsciously absorb details and later report them as original experience. There is also an uncomfortable question the most rigorous skeptics raise, and it deserves to be said plainly. Why would beings from another star system look like the Northern European beauty ideal? Tall, blonde, blue-eyed. Does that tell us something about extraterrestrials? Or about the people who generated these accounts, and what standards of beauty and superiority were embedded in their culture? That's an unsettling question. It's the right question. And yet, even accounting for all of this, there's something the skeptical framework doesn't fully resolve. Independent convergence at scale. Hundreds of accounts, no shared source. The same physical description, the same origin, the same central message. Science at its most honest doesn't say it doesn't exist. It says, we don't have sufficient evidence yet. Those are very different sentences. The mystery that remains open. We've reached the end of this investigation without a definitive answer. And that's deliberate. Anyone who arrives at the end of a subject like this claiming certainty in either direction wasn't investigating. They were confirming what they already believed before they started. What we have are facts. The accounts exist. The convergence exists. The independent cultural references exist. Taygeta exists. The unanswered questions exist. Maybe the Pleiadians never existed at all. Maybe they are the most sophisticated collective fiction humanity ever produced. Our most eloquent way of saying we refuse to be alone in the universe. That something larger is watching. That there is a purpose to all of this. If that's true, If the Pleiadians are nothing more than a mirror, then that mirror reflects something undeniably real. Humanity's need for cosmic belonging is as old as language itself. It's in the Greek myths, in the Mayan calendar, in the book of a New Jersey photographer who didn't know how to name what he'd seen. That longing is real, whatever its origin. But here's what I can't stop thinking about. Hundreds of accounts, different decades, different continents, no coordination. The same central message, that humanity is at a critical turning point and that it is not going through it alone. Maybe it's all invention. Maybe it's collective psychological need dressed up as contact. Or maybe, 410 light-years from here, under the blue-white light of two suns, someone is watching this moment unfold, waiting. With the kind of patience that only makes sense for a civilization that has watched entire worlds rise, burn, and go quiet. If this made you think, share it with someone who asks the same questions. And if you want to keep going down this rabbit hole, the next video covers another case that science still hasn't been able to close. See you there.